Karen, echo.
The open meeting law requires that I notify the public that this meeting is being recorded. Therefore, please be aware that an audio and visual recording of this meeting is being made by Boston City TV, a part of the City of Boston Office of Cable Communications, and is being broadcast on Xfinity Channel 24, RCN Channel 13, and FiOS Channel 962. Olivia, you can take it away.
All right, thank you. Welcome to the November meeting for the Boston Disability Commission Advisory Board. Let's do introductions. Starting with Ducia.
Thank you, Olivia. Good evening, everybody. I'm Ducia Lebovskaya, or Ducia L for short, and I'm the secretary, and I'm on advisory board, and I'm in Boston, specifically Mission Hill. Thank you.
All right, Jerry.
Hi, my name's Jerry Boyd. I live in West Roxbury, and I'm proud to be an advisory board member. And I'll just say, Ducia, you sounded a little underwater, so I don't know if you can adjust your audio at all.
All right, Paul.
Hi, my name's Paul Karen. I'm an advisory board member from the Beacon Hill West End area. I work at the BPDA and serve as a foreman in Laborers Local 151.
All right, Wesley.
Hi, everybody. I'm Wesley Ireland, and I'm actually speaking through a sign language interpreter, and I'm an advisory board member, and I live in the North End. Thanks.
All right, and that's what I see on my list for names. Is there anyone I've missed? No? Okay. Hearing none. I don't think we have a quorum. I think we're at 5. So this is going to be interesting because I don't think we can vote on the minutes yet.
We can't.
Yeah. All right. So putting that aside, I want to recognize Kim Tai
Hi.
to speak on.
Patricia, or should Sarah? Sarah. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Olivia. My name is Kim Tai. I'm a special assistant in the mayor's office. Thank you for having me this evening. Commissioner McCosh had reached out and asked if I could give a quick briefing about the recent executive order for Mayor Janey and encampment protocol. I'm sure a lot of you have seen in the news some of the reports, and so I can just give a quick overview and summary of the executive order as well as the protocol and answer any questions the commission may have. I'm wondering if it would be possible to put up the slides, I believe starting with page 6.
Yep, I think Patricia's working on that.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
It's asking for a meeting code.
Kim, could you try to pull it up?
Yes, sure, hold on one second. Just give me one moment. I'm not very good with technology. Let's see here. Just 1 second. I believe I can share my screen. All right. And just
Great.
Okay, yay, all right, that worked. Can everybody see that? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm just gonna flip to. So again, thank you for having me here to discuss the executive order that Mayor Janey issued. So on October 18th, Mayor Janey signed an executive order which established the city's response to public health crisis and encampments within the city of Boston. And the Boston Public Health Commission issued a public health declaration of a crisis with respect to homelessness, substance use disorder, and mental health in the city of Boston. Typically, when we've talked about these issues, most people reference mass and CAS, but this is really for a citywide executive order. And just recognizing that, after COVID-19 impacted the city of Boston, it really increased the number of those who are unsheltered, and also increasing just the number of people who are just vulnerable and facing opiate addiction. And so through this collaborative approach of many city agencies, the city wanted to address the public safety and public health concerns, and trying to enhance our efforts to provide more housing to those who are experiencing homelessness. And so the executive order is comprised of 5 components, which guides the city's plan to ensure that we're balancing the public health and public safety of individuals that are both living in tents and encampments throughout the city of Boston, and then specifically within Mass and CAS. And so the first component was to establish a central command structure. We working with our Office of Health and Human Services in partnership with the State Executive Office of Health and Human Services would create and lead a central coordinating structure to strengthen our street level interactions, and then also ensure that we're aligning all of our resources between the city and the state for those who are in need, and making sure that we're directing those efforts to address the public health crisis that's been created by the encampments in Boston. Another component of the central coordinating structure was also to track and provide to all the relevant departments any type of information concerning available shelter and treatment options. And this is the central coordinating structure meets twice a week. It is led by our Executive Director of Boston Public Health, Dr. Bisola Ojikutu, and our Chief of Staff, Chief Osgood. And we have, state agencies representation in there to facilitate and track that information. The second component of the executive order is to implement procedures and interventions to address the public health crisis that's been created. And as stated in our current and existing laws, coupled with the public health emergency, tents and temporary shelters, or otherwise known as encampments, will no longer be allowed in public ways within the city of Boston. We did publish a revised homeless encampment protocol on October 28th that establishes the procedures by which we assess the needs of those who are unsheltered, making sure that we're performing intensive and persistent outreach and engagement, and providing low barrier pathways to housing with the goal of connecting as many people as possible with appropriate shelter and services. It's really important for us to emphasize that we are not criminalizing homelessness or anyone who's suffering from substance use disorder or any mental health issues. Really, we're just utilizing existing regulations and laws. And then it's really also important to highlight that no City of Boston employee will require an unsheltered person or individual to remove their encampment from public property unless there is shelter or treatment placement available for that individual. The third component is making sure that we identify all forms of shelter for immediate placement. And so that's a collaboration between our DND and Boston Public Health Commission that will work with partner agencies to bring more beds online, including low threshold beds to support our regional rehousing and stabilization efforts and to try to serve the individuals that we serve who are experiencing homelessness. The fourth component and directive is to our Transportation Department and Public Works to make sure that we're implementing road safety measures to improve road and sidewalk safety and access to everyone that needs it, and focus on the cleanliness of the area, and to continually conduct cleanings in the Mass Ave and Milnia Cass area as well. And then finally, the fifth component is with respect to increasing enforcement of crime. And essentially, it's directing the police department to enforce all existing laws relating to drug trafficking, human trafficking, disorderly conduct, and trespassing. With the recognition that we are not, again, criminalizing substance use disorder, but rather we're trying to prioritize diversion into treatment wherever relevant and necessary. So I'll pause here to answer any questions with respect to the executive order. And I apologize because I'm screen sharing, I can't really see, so maybe Olivia, you can help me.
You could take down the screen sharing if you want, Kim.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any questions?
Wes is saying, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I know that recently the new mayor has appointed
appointing Monica Ball.
So as a part of the executive order, this new appointment has been made for someone who's been designated to focus on this area in the mayor's office. Is that correct?
So yes, Mayor-elect Wu, I believe, has appointed Monica Burrell as a new cabinet member to focus on not only Mass and Cass specifically, but the crossroads of homelessness, substance use disorder, as well as mental health, and leading the city with respect to addressing those challenges. And so outside of the executive order, but she will be carrying that charge with her moving forward with respect to implementing the components of the executive order as well as the encampment protocol.
I have a question. What can you do if a person refuses help? What can you do if a person refuses help and refuses to leave? How do you handle that?
Well, the prioritization is making sure that, we are focusing on the outreach and engagement and offering as many alternatives to the tents and temporary shelters, because, within the executive order and the public health declaration, Mayor Janey is essentially establishing that it is unsafe and unsafe for individuals to live within tents or shelters. If somebody does refuse after, ongoing engagement and outreach, it could lead to arrest for either disorderly conduct or trespass, but really that's sort of a last resort. This is really led by a public health charge and trying to make sure that, we are making excuse me, my dog is very frightening right now.
I love dogs.
That we are really focusing on trying to help as many people as possible. And, arrest is really, again, a last resort and trying to get as many people into treatment or into shelter or low threshold placements as quickly as possible. And that's really says a lot about the first two components of identifying as many alternatives as possible to tents or encampments.
Thank you.
Oh, go ahead, Jerry.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Kim, for your presentation. And as an aside, I am a huge jazz fan as well, so I'm very impressed by your decor in your room there or your home. I really appreciate that. And forgive me if I missed this in part of your presentation. But is there any sort of deadline that's been discussed to when encampments need to be down by, or are we continuing to be flexible in regards to that? And kind of to piggyback on that question, it's two-parter, I guess. Is how successful has the city seen the new executive order, so far the implementation of it? Have a lot of people taken advantage of services and whatnot? So.
That's a great question, Jerry. And thank you. I love Miles Davis, so I'm glad that you made that comment. So the encampment protocol became effective as of November 1st. So technically speaking, we do, moving forward from that date, prohibit all tents and encampments, but really just from a logistical perspective, and then also to make sure that the outreach and engagement is done in a thoughtful and methodical way. Just given the sheer volume of the number of tents and individuals who are experiencing homelessness and substance use disorder and mental health issues, we've been approaching the Massancas area at sections at a time. And it's really, again, being led by public health and the Office of Recovery Services. And I know you have Jen Tracy coming on to talk about a little bit about her office and their work as well. And so, again, while we could theoretically, based on the executive order and the protocol, just make it a blanket prohibition, this is not a sweep. It's not the intention to, again, criminalize any of these issues. We recognize that there has to be a public health prioritization in trying to get as much assistance to the individuals that we're encountering on a daily basis. As far as success, I think that, from November 1st to today, we've been very successful, at least in removing the tents and encampments along Southampton Street. We're moving slowly again, just to make sure that we do have shelter beds available, as many treatment beds available that we can find and make available to the individuals. And so we are making progress. I believe last week, Jen, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we got about 66 people into either shelter or treatment placement, which is huge numbers in comparison to years past. But again, it's challenging work. It depends on, meeting the needs of the people as we meet them. and making sure that, you know, we're also providing a continuum of care as well in our engagement. I hope that answers all of your questions, Jerry.
Yes, thank you so much. And good luck in the continued work. I realize that, you know, this is just a beginning of a process, and you know, hopefully as many people as they can will take advantage, and we're able to meet as many people as we can, you know, where they're at, and assist them. So.
Exactly. Thank you, Jen.
Okay, Zari, and then, are you on a timeline, Kim?
I am. I told Commissioner I had a hard stop at 6, but I know we started a little late, so I can stay around for, you know, a few more minutes, and then more than happy if there's any additional questions to forward them to Commissioner or anyone on our team, and happy to respond to any follow-up questions as well. Thank
Okay. Go ahead, Zari.
My question is pretty quick. I'm just wondering, as far as shelters go, you might have covered that already. As far as accessibility for people who need accessible shelters, is there a conscious effort in making sure that all the shelters that people are sent to are fully accessible?
That's a great question. I don't know if I'm the appropriate person to be able to answer that question. Jen, I don't know if you might know that answer. I'm making the assumption that because our shelter is run by the Boston Public Health Commission, that those needs are addressed within our shelter. We have a men's shelter at 112 Atkinson Street. We have our women's shelter over at 794 Albany, which is Woods Mullen. And then we also have been working with Pine Street Inn as well and other service providers. But I can certainly check in with the Public Health Commission and make sure that we can get back to you with that question and confirm that for you.
Great, thank you.
Yep. Paul?
I just want to say thanks to Kim for the outstanding job she did tonight, and we're already noticing the progress under what Mayor Walsh started and what Acting Mayor Janey's doing, and I'm sure Mayor Wu will be strong about taking full advantage of the progress, and thank you for your time tonight, Kim.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
All right. Seeing none other, I'm going to say we move on because it's 6:01.
Olivia, can we have Jen go next because she's following up on a lot of this work?
Absolutely.
Great.
So the next thing will be the presentation from the Recovery Services Engagement Center, Jen Tracy.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Commissioner, and the Commission, and Kim, thanks for all your hard work. It's been lots of hours and tireless days trying to, get this right and make this protocol operate with this dignity and respect. So am I sharing my screen?
That would be great if you can.
If I can, okay. And also, I noticed on my slides, how much time do I have?
15, 20
How much
minutes.
time? Minutes, okay. Okay, so the Engagement Center is the last slide, so I will make sure that we leave time to talk about it. I'm gonna share my screen here. Let's see.
We can see it.
See it, okay, let me put slideshow. Kim and I are probably the least. Did I make it worse?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. Okay, we can do it this way. Does this work for people? Yep, that looks Okay, I think I don't know how to get the bar off the side, so sorry about that. I'm just making it small for you all. So thanks so much for having me today. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about the Office of Recovery Services. And I'll just start out with a little background on our office. The office was opened in August of 2015. It's the first municipal office in the United States to address substance use at a department level within city government. Our mission is to advance equitable and comprehensive substance use recovery by increasing access and filling critical gaps. We offer direct care services and programming aimed at prevention, intervention, treatment, and recovery support. And we work across all city departments and with community partners to create a coordinated citywide recovery strategy and really focus on reducing stigma. So a couple of slides here are some background on the opioid epidemic. As we know, the epidemic is a national crisis that has impacted big cities, small towns, and rural communities all across the country. The epidemic crosses all neighborhood boundaries, impacting Bostonians in every corner of the city. The heat map on the right is just an example of our post-overdose response team visits. That's a team made up of recovery coaches from the Boston Fire Department and our public health advocates here at Recovery Services who go out following an overdose. And the map really tells the story of how this epidemic hits all neighborhoods in the city of Boston. The majority of fatal overdoses continues to occur in isolation, at homes and in public restrooms. The epidemic turned more deadly and complex with the infusion of fentanyl in the drug supply. And the epidemic peaked in 2016 and stabilized statewide after that, prior to the pandemic, obviously. Couple of slides on the pandemic and cross-section with the epidemic. So the pandemic, dramatically increased the numbers of individuals navigating substance use, homelessness, and mental health. And Kim mentioned the increase of the street population in all cities across the U.S. We experienced a greater acuity and complexity of need. Why? The drug supply became more concentrated. Fentanyl became more prevalent in non-opioid drugs, so started showing up in cocaine, pills, and other drugs. And individuals became disconnected with their service providers due to the pandemic and the closure of everything, right? So we've all experienced that, and you're quite familiar. But for this population, obviously a very vulnerable population, the disconnection from services was, the impact was great. The treatment system, obviously for COVID, had to lower its capacity. So we had less beds available to people at that time. And as you may know, hundreds of individuals were released from correctional institutions due to COVID, and to deconcentrate prisons and jails, but with very little planning for folks back into the community. Unless, really all systems kind of shutting down for this population, for all of us, but particularly hard for these folks. In 2020, as a result, had the highest rates of overdose deaths ever on record. In the state of Massachusetts, there were 2,035 confirmed overdose-related deaths and 245 for the city of Boston. And then some emerging trends for folks. Methamphetamine stimulants have been on a rise for about the past 5 years, and mixing with the opiate epidemic, including an uptick of HIV infections in the city of Boston as a result of people who inject drugs. And that was most prevalent in our homeless population. This slide just shows some of the same impacts of COVID. This is really addressing more of the instability, the closure of public buildings, the increase in anxiety and depression, the isolation, et cetera. One notable fact on here, the rate of overdose death increased by 70% among Black, non-Hispanic men. And so during the pandemic, we felt the inequities that COVID, hit in other communities, in our community as well. So a little bit about the direct services that we provide. We provide a continuum of harm reduction, outreach, and engagement services. We have a team of outreach workers in the MassCast neighborhood. Started with 4 outreach workers under Mayor Walsh and has grown to 16. Those folks are sort of canvassing the neighborhood, helping individuals access care, engaging with folks, trying to get them inside and into care. The engagement center, which I'll talk about at the end, is the large white fabric structure or tent that was opened in 2017 as a result of people congregating on the corners in the neighborhood and not really having a place to go during the day. And these were folks that may have lived in the shelter, but were out and about during the day and just wanting a place to hang out. It was also people that were coming into the neighborhood for services, to go to the BMC. So just a bunch of different folks that were, I think you all probably remember if you know the area, the Cumberland Farms that was on the corner of Albany and Mass Ave. Those large crowds. So we opened the engagement center at the time because no one would let us open any of the other spaces that we had put on the table. So this was a space behind the 112 Southampton Street shelter at the time that was not being used. It was built for when the shelter was being built to have the food services at. So it was empty, and Mayor Walsh at the time said, let's just pilot this and see how it goes. And it was, very successful with the community and with the folks on the street right from the beginning. Access to care, we're always looking to increase access to care in neighborhoods and also in this neighborhood particularly, but also with families and community folks as well. So we have a drop-in service here that's open 7 days a week that exclusively just helps people navigate care. It's also the 311 line and a hotline number as well to answer questions and help people navigate the system. And then we have in Mattapan, on River Street in Mattapan, we have 3 residential programs. We have a bilingual, bicultural program for women and their children. We have a step down from detox program, a transitional support service, and we have a men's recovery home as well. During COVID, we had to really accelerate, the needs that were confronting us on the street, and the face of addiction had changed over the last couple of years, that we had to completely transform our street team, which initially was public health advocates and recovery coaches, canvassing the neighborhood and engaging folks. And we had to add to that group that we started with nurses from Boston Healthcare for the Homeless. We added psychiatry from Elliott Community Human Services and housing navigation. So the street team now down in the area, which as you know, we see about 350 people daily, and in a 6-month period, we saw 4,000 individuals. This street team is on the street 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, getting people HIV medication, testing, reversing overdoses, dealing with the medical issues with the nursing team, and getting people into treatment. Then our most exciting news to share with everyone, I put opening in December there, is the engagement center. So I mentioned the tent, the large white fabric structure, which was built to really give people a place to go during the day, a safe place to go, have a cup of coffee, have water, soup, snack. Also use the bathrooms. Bathroom accessibility is a major issue in the city. We had some showers there and connection to care and just connection in general to their community. And so we are about to open, and probably in just a couple of weeks. I said opening December, but I like to give myself a little leeway, so hopefully by the end of November, we'll be opening this new state-of-the-art facility, and it just, it'll be such a welcome relief for guests and for staff who've been working so hard out of a tent that has no running water, basically, and has been using, porta potties and whatever for 4 years. So the building on the slide is a picture of the outside of the building, where you see a very vibrant, colorful mural by our Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture, commissioned a muralist. We were lucky because this is a new build. We received resources for a muralist. And that's the outside of the building that you see. And then there's a small rendition of the inside, which is a very wide open, rectangular space with, tables and chairs for relaxing, a front desk that has computer access for folks, phone chargers. There's some limited laundry. It will have showers and bathrooms and a small courtyard in the back. The rendering shows the very tall ceilings and the really impressive sort of artwork, really providing a space that is, just well-deserved by the folks that are kind of struggling every day, and providing dignity and respect to those that we serve. I think that's it, yes. Stop sharing.
Are you ready to take questions?
Yes, and then I'm happy to take questions, of course. I'm trying to get back to you guys.
Okay, let's start with Ducia.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Let's get that either. Can you see me?
We can still see your screen, Jen.
Oh, okay.
Is there a button that says stop sharing?
It says new shoe stuff. Yeah, there it is.
Great.
Thank you. Yeah, happy to answer any questions.
Ducia? All right, let's move on to Wesley.
Okay, great. Sorry. I was trying to get my camera on. So I have two questions, possibly a third, depending on how the second question is answered. My first question is, I'm not sure if I missed this information. You might have mentioned it already, but you talked about the engagement center, right? Where is it located? Where is the specific location? Did you mention where it's located?
So it is located, the new building is located just practically adjacent to the current one. So engagement center right now is right behind 112 Southampton Street Shelter on Atkinson Street in Southampton. So the large tent, we will move from the large tent to this new building, and the new building is just a little bit further down the parking lot. So almost like where the Atkinson and Bradston Street corner.
I see.
So same, basically the same area, same parking lot.
I see. Okay. All right. So again, thank you. Thank you so much for your presentation. I guess I have a follow-up question. I can see, as someone who lives in Boston, I often see, probably for the past 5 to 10 years, I've seen what's occurred in terms of the problem with overdoses. And I see people on the street and on the train who are struggling with substance use disorder. And so sometimes, I feel as though, I'm tempted to maybe, people might want to call the police when they see people who are struggling, but is there any other sort of outreach number that people could call rather than the police to be able to respond to someone who might be in trouble?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking that. So, if we're worried about someone's impairment, then of course we should call 911. But there's other folks that you may see on a regular basis, maybe on a certain corner in a bus stop that you are concerned about. You can use 311 always to report that. Kim, who was on earlier, myself, and about 10 other city departments meet daily for a check-in around issues like this in the neighborhood. So we get all of the 311s that are classified under unsheltered individuals, and so those are concerns that sort of fit into that category. So to answer your question, of course, like if you're concerned about anything that deserves a warrant a 911 call, then we always say 911. But if it's something that you're just, you're worried about someone that you're seeing on a regular basis, or you're not sure, then 311 is used all the time for that kind of stuff, and we respond depending on which department is responding.
Okay, I see. So I do have a follow-up question then. First of all, I have seen someone on the train, and when I go to get off the stop and the doors open, and really sometimes it depends on where the person is. I take note of where the person is, and I might let somebody know in the MBTA that I've noticed somebody. And also, it's been a frustrating experience for me because if I do call 911 through the video relay service, I know that I could have texted 911. I also could have used 311, but I also wonder if there could be some other more public awareness mechanism or option instead of just calling 911. I think that would be really helpful in terms of, I think pushing the 311 effort to be more visible for people to call as opposed to 911 might be a good approach, because these are people who need help, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know if there's someone in another department who could help promote that 311 number. And then again, it depends on how fast the response is to those 311 calls, right? So I don't know how quickly the issue is responded to. 311 is a direct line to the city of Boston, and I know that 311 handles a lot of inquiries and reports, but I'm probably focusing on this specific problem as well. So I just wonder what other options there are.
Mm-hmm. Sure, yes. Those are good points, and I'm happy. We talk with 311 all the time. Like I said, we put this group together of about 10 city departments that responds to 311s. In pretty much daily, we're checking the 311s that come in, and then we triage to the appropriate department, so we all get the same email with the same incident on it. And then it's either, sometimes it's Public Works because it might just be clothing or something that's been left behind, or sometimes it's a person and we'll send, we have our outreach team that will go out. We have Pine Street that has a large outreach team that will go out depending on where it is. Sometimes we have someone check in the morning and someone check at night. Pine Street has an overnight van. And we also, the Boston Police have had a street outreach unit that is trained in recovery, coaching, de-escalation, and other things. They have a 7-person outreach team that also helps reach out. But I hear what I understand what you're saying. It is complicated, and we have not done a city like 311 campaign for overdose. The state has, you may see stickers, on garbage pails and stuff across the
I would
city
highly recommend it.
the state. Yeah, no, that's a good point. Thanks. And I also want to add, this is sort of related, but not. But if you or any, for yourself, family member, community, neighbor, or whatnot, this is so prevalent. We do Narcan trainings and overdose prevention trainings for the public. And if that's anything that, the commission ever wanted, we could work with Commissioner McCosh on, making sure that we were able to do that, for this group too. And we've done it for staff at City Hall. We do it, publicly all the time. And we do it, across the city all the time. So that's another thing you can do if you feel like you want, to understand some of the overdose response while you call 911, always.
Thank you so much.
Olivia, you're on mute.
Olivia, I think you're on mute.
Thank you, sorry. Ducia typed her question for you.
So the question is the location for men and women, and also is your company collaborating with Women's Lunch Place? The location is for men and women. So men, women, couples, and we do collaborate with most of the day drop-in spaces across the city, certainly. So yes, we have places where people can go to get resources, and work very closely with St. Francis House downtown as the other largest day shelter in the city of Boston. So we're constantly trying to share resources. We have more of a medical compromised population down in Mass Cass, and St. Francis House has the same, but also homeless, mental health. They have more workforce training programs. They have a recovery center within St. Francis. So we're working together to try to match the right people with the right services and support each other in that, so that folks have a pathway to build support. Yes, thank you. Good question.
All right, Zari, go ahead.
And thank you so much for your presentation. So I have a couple of questions. One is that I know that the concentration has been on Mass and Cass area, but I live in South Boston, and I've noticed that there are a few people that have put up tents in grass area near my residence. Mm-hmm. So I'm just wondering, for areas outside of that Mass Cass, is there any kind of consideration or work that would involve those people that are outside of that area?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So, that should be you should 311 that as well. It goes to the group. Obviously Masscast is the largest encampment that we've ever seen. But there are smaller ones all across the city. And the encampment protocol, I'm not sure if Kim mentioned, but the encampment protocol is a notice posting of 48 hours. That includes engagement from the time of posting until the time, that we ask people to pick up their things and, try to get them into care. So we do that on smaller ones, 2 tent, 1 tent. We always want to make sure that people are safe and okay, and we're going to outreach. We have, several outreach teams in the city. So everyone has a different story. Some people need more mental health support. And so, we may call on the DMH street team. We may call on Pine Street to bring psychiatry out. People, drug use might be the issue. Our team might go out and be better suited. So it's really individual, depends on the individual, as you know.
Thank you. And I guess my second part of the question is, I work at Mass General, and I know that they run a homeless clinic on Thursdays. Do you work with Mass General and kind of do an outreach for people that come to our clinic so that they have the resources and the information about the shelters and anything else that might be available to them?
So we have, lots of coordinated groups. I'm sure, did you say do you work at the clinic, or are you there?
I work at Mass General, but I don't work at the clinic.
Right. So I do know the folks at the clinic, but if there's, especially with COVID, when people are back, be happy to we have outreach. I don't know, the Care and Reach van, which is our AHOPE harm reduction team with Boston Healthcare for the Homeless, that goes out on the Care and Reach van. They're downtown, and so they connect, certainly with people on the street downtown, more in the Mass General area. But always happy to connect and drop off resources, or make sure that we're getting people the info. Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, Jerry, you had your hand up?
I did, but in the interest of time, I could always save my question, but if we have time for it, I'll certainly ask for it.
Yeah, we got time.
Okay. Yes. Thank you for the work that you're doing and your staff is doing. You said you had how many outreach workers, or how many staff do you have currently?
Well, the entirety of the staff we have about 150 across all those campuses that I described. The outreach, I described how we started with 4 outreach workers in 2017, and we have now 17 actually. Now that's not, we're open 7 days a week, 12 hours a day.
Sure.
We don't have 17 on every shift, that sure. 17 staff members, is the equivalent of having a team of 4 out, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Do you feel that's meeting the need, or are there discussions to get more?
Yeah, I mean, partly, like I mentioned earlier, we've added to our team we've pulled in other community providers and really tried to coordinate the care because it's pretty taxing on our staff
sure.
Also. And, as you know, our staff, have to be Boston residents, and we're competing with the other outreach teams. But with that said, that's why, Healthcare for the Homeless has they have 17 FTEs that are working on the street with us down there. So that team has been built in the last 2 years with us. So that's how much nursing care we have on the street right now, providing, you know, wound care, overdose response, cold weather injuries, you know, hot weather injuries. So the need for the medical care has really skyrocketed.
And has there been discussion about, you know, more resources with the federal, you know, with the federal stimulus money? You know, has there been talk about, you know, maybe trying to get more staff involved? You know, I'm just curious.
Yeah, well, very simply, I don't, this could be a whole nother conversation, but the healthcare and substance use, especially because of the epidemic, we are in an extreme workforce crisis right now with the workforce. We actually had a call today, 2 o'clock today, a call out to cities and towns outside of Boston to really think creatively with us, because we are the city, you know, the Health Commission and Department of Neighborhood Development, and, you know, all of us at the city are working to locate spaces to get people from tents inside. And as we work on properties, we're finding that the provider system is really in crisis and not able to staff the spaces that we might find. So we have this dual kind of role right now of finding spaces to get people from tents safely inside somewhere so that we can stabilize them and move them to housing. Because living on the street overnight is very chaotic and can be violent, and people are, you know, it's hard to move them to treatment. At the same time, the call out today, and we have an RFI, I can put that in the link. We have an RFI out to cities and towns to partner with us to staff sites to help. And they don't, you know, they could be inside Boston or outside Boston, but really to increase the capacity for low barrier housing, you know, transitional housing. So long answer to your question around more staff. Yes. Resources, yes. We know that we have ARPA, federal ARPA funding that the city of Boston has, like other cities, have large amounts of money that we really want to use to make some transformational change, and we're trying to think creatively how best to do that.
Well, great, and I hope that the incoming administration, you know, is supportive of that work and really supports devoting resources to build up your work. And again, I thank you for your work. It's tremendous.
Thanks, and I put my email there, so if anyone has ideas, send them over, because we really are trying to think as creatively as possible.
Juan Carlos, and then we have to move on to our next presentation.
All right.
Go ahead.
Hi, thank you, Jen, for sharing all this important work, especially during the pandemic. I'm hoping you can perhaps talk briefly a little about the efforts for providing services for people who are trying to reach out for help but not necessarily speak English fluently. Are there enough interpreters available for multiple languages, perhaps?
Great question. We have a really diverse staff and speak. We have different languages at our Access to Care program, and that would be the place that's like the front door, and that's the place where people can walk in or call the number to ask questions about services or maybe options, and it can be where do I start, or it can be where can I go today. So we do have Spanish speaking, Spanish speakers as part of our services. Beyond that, we have the outreach has some capacity for other languages, but beyond that, we would connect with the city's interpreter services or the Department of Public Health, who's one of our main funders.
I see. Thank you so much, Jen.
All right. Thank you for your presentation and for answering all of our questions. And we will move on to Teresa Texera at Community Choice Energy.
Hi. Well, thank you for having me. Am I able to share my screen, or am I going to follow along? Can I share my screen?
There, please.
Yes, please share. Thanks.
Can you all see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. So thank you, Olivia. My name is Teresa Texera. I'm actually from the Community Choice Electricity Program in the City of Boston's Energy Department, the Environment Department, excuse me. And I'm just here to talk about what Community Choice Electricity is, how to apply for assistance rate, or what programs qualify you for assistance rate for electricity payments, how to read your bill, and then competitive supply. What is competitive supply? And what the pitfalls of signing up for that may be. So just really quickly, the Environment Department has a few different programs in it, from like cycling, recycling, trash, composting, and then the energy team, which houses the Community Choice Electricity Program, which I manage. Here's just a quick agenda, the 4 major topics that I'm going to cover today. And so what is Community Choice Electricity, right? It doesn't really tell you what it is in the name. It just, it has to do with electricity because that's in there, right? So Community Choice Electricity is a municipal aggregation, which is a community program that is in over 150 cities or towns in Massachusetts, with Boston being the largest one. And essentially what we did when we started the aggregation earlier this year in February was we pulled the buying power of all Boston residents and eligible businesses to bring renewable, affordable, and stable electricity to the city outside of Eversource Basic Service, which is the city's default electricity. So with doing that, we were able to take about 60 to 75% of the customers from Eversource Basic Service and move them on to Community Choice Electricity to again provide them that affordable, renewable, and stable electricity. While we do aim to provide affordable electricity, because Eversource changes their rates twice a year, January 1st for the winter and then July 1st for the summer rates, our rates do compete at times, and we may not always be have a better pricing than them, but we always aim for that. What's next? So previously you had 2 choices. You either had Eversource Basic Service, which was the default electricity in the city of Boston. So anybody moving into the city or moving around the city, when you select your electricity, if you do not designate a supplier, you're automatically put onto Eversource Basic Service. If you were to sign up with the supplier, you would sign a contract with the supplier, and they would provide you electricity at their rates. Eversource still manages your account. They will send you your bill. They read your meter. They process your payments. They manage the wires and poles in the city. And so you're still going to receive a bill from Eversource, and you may still see postings around the city, for example, that say Eversource, but they may not be your supplier if you signed a contract with one. And they also deliver your electricity. But now you have this other option, which is Community Choice Electricity. We do not have a contract that you sign up with. We select a supplier through a bidding process, and then with that, we secure pricing for residents. Currently, we have pricing secured for the next 25 months, so it is running through this month, November, up until December 2023. So we have 3 different product prices, and our standard product, which anybody who comes in through Eversource Basic Service gets automatically enrolled into the middle product there, which is called our standard product or a default option. And then we also have an optional basic product, which is just slightly less expensive. And then we have optional Green 100, which means that 100% of the electricity you receive is going to be from a renewable source, such as from a solar or wind power. our rates, since we started in February, have gone down about 2% from the optional basic and the standard product, and then gone down 6% from the optional green 100 product. If you came from Eversource Basic Service, then you probably received a notification in the mail from us at some point in time over the last few months that said that you are going to be enrolled into this program. It's an auto enrollment program, and if you would like to continue with it, you do not need to do anything. If you do not want to be enrolled into Community Choice Electricity, you would sign an opt-out card and send it back. You can also opt out in various other ways, and I can show you that on the next one. We have this notification, we call it our welcome letter. We have it translated into 11 languages, and we also have it in screen reader print and large print, as you can see here. And all of those are available on our website, which is boston.gov/community choice electricity. So ways to opt in and opt out. You do not need to opt in if you receive the notification in the mail, which at this point over 200,000 residents have. We have over 200,000 customers on Community Choice Electricity from Eversource Basic Service. If you wanted to opt in, let's say you moved into the city and you haven't gotten that letter from us yet, you can opt in from either calling Constellation, which is the supplier we chose through that bidding process, at 833-930-3161, or you can go onto our website and sign up there. If you wanted to opt out, meaning you did not want to participate in Community Choice Electricity, you can do so either at the number at our website, or you can do so by signing that opt-out card that comes into the mail, in the mail, and sending it back to us. And just a couple things to remember: it's an auto enrollment program, so if you're at Eversource Basic Service, you will be getting a notification at some point, if you haven't already, stating that you're going to be moved on to Community Choice Electricity, and you can opt in, opt out, opt up to the Green 100 product, or opt down to the optional basic, which saves you a little bit of money. At any time, no penalties, no terminations, because again, you're not signing a contract with us. So what is competitive supply? I've kind of mentioned competitive supply once or twice already. So what is it? So competitive supply is a for-profit company that may approach residents or small businesses in the city of Boston, or honestly anywhere throughout the country, since we're talking about Boston, I'll keep it local, to sign a contract that they will supply your electricity. They may offer incentives such as $50 gift cards, $100 gift cards, and things of that nature. And then they may promise like low rates if you sign a contract with them. The Attorney General's office actually found that competitive electric suppliers, while their rates may seem low, in the long run, you're actually going to be losing money with them. In Massachusetts, since 2015, they found that residents have lost over $400 million signing contracts with competitive electric supply, with the average household losing about $226 a year, and the hardest hit families losing about $500 a year. And what happens when you sign up for Community Choice Electricity, besides possibly losing money, is that the rates change. They can change at the end of your contract, which is the most likely time frame. Sometimes the contracts are 12 months, 24 months, or 36 months. But what they don't tell you is that at the end of your contract, you do not go back to Eversource Basic Service unless you call and have your account moved back to Eversource. And then at that point, if you do not do that, which most people don't, you're moved to what's called a month-to-month contract. So you can get out at any time, but most people aren't aware that they're on a month-to-month contract and that their prices have increased. And something that we want to kind of get out there, and the reason why I wanted to present, besides to provide information about Community Choice Electricity, is that over the next few months, the winter rates are going to come into play for Eversource, as well as their own competitive electricity supply companies. And the current market trends are showing that rates are going to be increasing to about 22 cents a kilowatt hour. And a kilowatt hour is just the amount of electricity you use. And 22 cents is about double the amount of kilowatt hour charge that the community charge electricity standard product charges. So when you do the math and you use about 600 kilowatt hours a month, which is the average for a Boston resident, you're going to pay an additional $65 signing a contract with a competitive supplier at 22 cents an hour, 22 cents a kilowatt hour or more. They also do a lot of targeting. They target a lot of low-income residents, specifically in these neighborhoods: Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, Austin, Hyde Park, Jamaica Plain, and Roslindale. And as you can see in 02125 and 02121, over 50%, over half of the residents that are considered low income are on competitive supply. And a few slides back, I mentioned that households are losing money on competitive supply. So essentially, the families and households that need it the most are actually spending more money on electricity compared to other families and other residents in the city of Boston. And it's not just low-income residents. It's minorities as well, Black and brown persons, potentially immigrant families and communities, as well as elderly communities. And the Attorney General's office found that the competitive suppliers actually charge higher rates for electricity in communities with lower incomes and higher percentage of minority households. The highest I've seen so far is 32 cents a kilowatt hour. And while 32 cents doesn't sound like much, when you multiply that by 600 kilowatt hours, it does come out to quite a bit. And again, the community choice electricity program rates our standard rates are 11 cents. So that's almost 3 times the amount of the rate that we charge. So some things that they do not want you to know, and competitive suppliers do not want residents or small businesses to ask, or what's the length of the contract? Are there penalties or termination if I want to terminate the contract? Termination fees can vary somewhere between $2.50 per month left on your contract, which is very rare, up to about $150 or $200. So they can be quite pricey. And again, people are already losing money being on competitive supply, so adding an additional $150 to terminate a contract can be very costly, and most people cannot afford that, so they'll continue to stay on competitive supply. Is the rate fixed or variable? Will it change over time? Once your contract ends, will it stay at the rate that you worked previously on, or will it increase? Typically, the answer is that it's going to increase, and it increases significantly. Does it automatically renew? I mentioned earlier that the contracts at the end of their term, typically they end up going into month-to-month contracts, which means your contract is over, you submitted, you've finished your commitment to them, but because you haven't moved off of their service, you're going to continue to pay their rates. So these are all things that they don't want people to ask, but these are all things that are very important to ask when signing any contract, but especially a competitive supply contract, because they can be lengthy, so anywhere between 12 months to 3 years. If you feel like you've been deceived by a competitive supply company, if somebody has come to your door stating that they are Eversource, if they called you asking you to sign a contract with them and saying that they are Eversource basic service, that is a form of deception. You can file a consumer complaint with either the Massachusetts Attorney General's office or the Massachusetts Department of Public Utilities. Either are great, and one of the best resources on the issue of competitive supply is actually the Attorney General's office. Next, reading your bill. I'll try to go through this really quickly. I think it's quite important. A lot of people don't actually know what's on their bill or how to read their bill. But there's a lot of information on your bill that is quite important to know. So there's 2 parts of the bill for electricity. There's your supply charge and your delivery charge. Your supply charge would be the portion of the electricity that's coming from either Eversource Basic Service, Community Choice Electricity or the contract, the company that you signed a contract with for electricity. The delivery side is the side that goes towards Eversource for maintaining the wires and poles, for sending your bill, for reading your meters and things of that nature. So there are two separate portions of your bill that make up the total. So here's what a bill would actually look like, right? So on the left-hand side is a sample bill. On the right-hand side are just three figures that are kind of just blown up to show you what it would look like if you were on one of the three options. If you were on Eversource, it would say Eversource on there and have their contact information. If you were on competitive supply, it would have whatever company you signed a contract with on there with their number as well as their website, so you can always know who to call when there's an issue. And then Community Choice Electricity will say billing for City of Boston, CCE. On the back of the bill also has a lot of great information that's very important for all electricity customers to know about. It has your kilowatt hours, which is the energy you used in that time frame. In this example, it's 27 days. So this person used 453 kilowatt hours in a 27-day period. And the average user is about 600 kilowatt hours. So this person is using slightly less. Their supplier, here it says Eversource Basic Service, and then the amount per kilowatt hours used, which shows here that it's 13.13588 cents. So that when you multiply the kilowatt hours used by the amount per kilowatt, you'll get the supply portion of your bill. And that'll be the charge for the supply portion, not the delivery. And then moving on to delivery, there's something very important here where it says the residential rate. Residential rates are it'll either say R1, R2, or R3. R1 and R3 are residential rates with no discount, and an R2 rate is a residential rate with a discount. So if your bill says R1 and you know you should qualify or you do qualify for an assistance rate, the first thing you want to do is identify which assistance you're supposed to be on. Let's say if you qualify for SNAP, have you applied with your SNAP information? And you can do so at with Eversource directly. So just kind of moving on to residential assistance. What does it look like and who qualifies? If you have any of these programs or qualify for any of these programs, such as public housing, SNAP, WIC, Mass Health, basic or standard, any veteran services, fuel assistance, supplemental security income, any of these, you qualify to get a discount on your electricity rate. And when you qualify for that, you get 36% off on both your electricity part of the bill as well as your supply, your delivery part of the bill as well as your supply part of the bill. So it's a great amount of savings, especially if you tend to use a lot of electricity every month. So in the City of Boston, ABCD is the designated organization that assists with questions or applying to any of these programs if you're not currently on them. And you can reach them either at bostonabcd.org or 617-357-6000. You can also call Eversource directly to apply for the assistance rate. And some other things that you should take into consideration. Eversource has payment plans for anybody who is either fallen behind or would like more stable billing. So if you wanted to pay a certain amount per month because it would be easier for you to keep track of, Eversource does have a monthly payment plan, which I believe is about 12 months, and then you pay the same amount for each month of those 12 months. And then there's also the New Start repayment plan. Anybody who's behind in their electricity payments 2 or more months, they're overdue, $300 overdue, and qualifies for the assistance that we've just seen on the last page. They can qualify for the New Start repayment plan. You would have to call into Eversource. They'll ask you questions about which assistance do you currently have, and then they can start you on the New Start repayment plan. And as long as you make the monthly payments as designated, the back due portion, so the portion that was overdue, will be forgiven every month. So it's a 12-month forgiveness plan. And then outside of that, there is the Good Neighbor Energy Fund. So anybody who does not qualify for any sort of discount may be able to qualify for a Good Neighbor Energy Fund, which will also help them with their electricity payments. And lastly, there's the Rental Relief Fund out of the Office of Housing Stability in the Department of Neighborhood Development in the city of Boston. Outside, a lot of people know that they have been helping with rental arrears, so anybody who's behind on rent. But they also can help with up to $2,000 in utility payments, including internet. And just a few more things to be aware of. If you, your electricity cannot be shut off. Any of your utilities actually, so your electricity, your gas, and your water cannot be shut off unless the DPU gives a directive to do so if these things apply. So if everybody in the home is 65 years or older, if everybody in the home is 65 years or older and there's a minor in the home, if there's an infant in the home, regardless of the age of everybody else in the home, if someone in the home has a serious illness, or during the no shut-off period, which actually starts in about 5 days, I believe, November 15th up until March 15th. So if Eversource does happen to shut off your electricity and you qualify for any of those factors, the first thing you want to do is immediately call Eversource to have them reinstate your electricity. Again, they cannot do so. They cannot shut off your electricity without the Department of Public Utilities telling them to do so. But if they do, and you qualify again for any of those on the last page, then you want to call Eversource Basic Service, Eversource Customer Services Line, they have 2 numbers, and have them reinstate it. If they do not, or if you still want to file a complaint because you already proven that you are you fit into one of those categories, then you can call the Department of Public Utilities. You can file a complaint with them, or you can tell them that you contacted Eversource and they're not, sorry, can you guys still see me? Sorry about that. So the Department of Public Utilities, you can file a complaint or have them direct Eversource to turn back your electricity back on. And then lastly, there's the Attorney General's office where you can file a consumer complaint at any point. And that's actually it for me. Sorry. And so now I can take questions, or did I go over time? Sorry.
In the interest of time, let's limit our questions for her. Just, it's already 7:01.
These slides to you if you don't have them already, so you can refer back to the information moving forward.
Yeah. All right, thank you for your presentation.
No problem. And I put my email address in the chat. So if anybody has any questions or follow-up, feel free to email me at any time and I'll be happy to answer your question.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Now that we have a quorum, let's take a vote on the approval of the minutes. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
This is Jerry. I move to approve the minutes.
Second?
This is Carl, I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Or the motion's approved, sorry. I'm going to skip the chair's report because I want to save time and get to the commissioner's report.
Yeah, and I will also be super quick. So
Okay.
Patricia's going to share her screen. Oh, here we go. Great. So we can go to the next slide. Okay, so, great. So first, on top of mind, everyone's mind these days is the mayoral election and transition. As we all know, Michelle Wu won the general election a few weeks ago and will become the next mayor of Boston. Mayor Janey gave her farewell address earlier this afternoon, thanking her administration, her staff, and looking forward to the next chapter of her work in Boston. The swearing-in of Mayor-elect Wu will be next Tuesday, November 16th, in the City Council chamber. She will have a larger inauguration celebration at some point in January. And I know previously board members have been invited to the inauguration of the mayor, so I will update you as we get closer to January. I'm thinking that next week will be a very small event, so board members won't be invited to that most likely. And then the transition is underway. We know it's a short time frame this year. It's not the usual 3 months. It's like 3 weeks from the time she was elected. So we're working very closely with the Health and Human Services Cabinet and Mayor-elect Wu's transition team. Just an update on the open positions in our office, if you could spread the word. Our outreach and engagement specialist position just closed. We've been doing interviews and we'll be hiring someone soon. Our ASL interpreter position is still open. We have no applicants yet, so please help us spread the word. And if you know of anybody who's interested who is not a Boston resident, we can work with them to try to see if we can hire them despite the fact that they're not a resident. It may take some work, but we may be able to do that. And we also have an opening for a parking program manager, which is currently posted. So related more to the board's work, I just wanted to circle back with the welcome letter to Mayor-elect Wu, outlining the board's priorities and welcoming her to her role as mayor. We sent out a draft last month for you to review. So if you are interested in moving forward with the letter, we need someone to make a motion and vote to update the draft and send it to Mayor Wu after she's sworn in. So I will leave that in your hands, Olivia. Next slide. Okay, so briefly, we had our captions ordinance hearing yesterday. It was very well attended and it went very well. Counselors who were in attendance were Counselor Flynn, who sponsored the hearing, Counselor Mejia, Braden, O'Malley, and Flaherty. City departments who attended were Age Strong, Economic Development, the Office of Language and Communication Access, and the Licensing Board. Disability community members who gave testimony included Wesley Ireland. Wesley, you did a great job. Thank you so much for giving us this idea and for testifying. Laurie Seidman from the DPC, Andy Foreman from BCIL, and Carl had signed up, but he was unable to make it, and we really missed you, Carl. So for next steps, Counselor Flynn is going to convene a working group soon, probably in December, to work on the program parameters, create an implementation plan, and establish the formal complaint and resolution process. The city departments will work on reaching out to businesses, nonprofits, and other ADA Title III entities who would be subject to this requirement. And although we did some outreach to the businesses, none of them attended the hearing yesterday. So we want to really make sure that they're aware of this before we just roll it out. So we're going to do a lot of work to try to loop the businesses in. And then my office will work on developing an outreach plan for businesses and the disability community, create some tools on enabling captions, and establish a timeline for launching the initiative. Okay, and then quickly on the next slide is just a real brief update on our employment events that we had in October. We held our Pathways to Employment panel. It was a virtual panel where we had human resources staff from the big city agencies that do their own hiring. So that was the City of Boston, most of the jobs in City Hall. Then we had the Boston Housing Authority, the Boston Public Health Commission, Boston Planning and Development Agency, and the Boston Public Schools. So each of their human resources departments talked about the application process, job requirements, and walked them through the job portal if they want to apply for any open jobs. And the messaging is really that the city has a ton of open jobs. So spread the word if anyone's interested in applying, especially now with the transition. There will be new jobs created and people transitioning out of their roles in City Hall. So please spread the word on that. The clients who attended were Job Ready residents of Boston from the Mass Rehab Commission, Mass Commission for the Blind, and BPS Strive program. We're also doing our Mass Rehab virtual internship, which is a series of 6 workshops for a cohort of MRC clients who are beginning their job search and looking to work in public service. And then some big news, we do have a meeting on Monday with the federal government branch, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid. Dan Tai, who was the former director of Massachusetts Mass Health, he was appointed to be the director of CMS. So as part of my work with the other disability commissioners across the country, we're meeting with Dan and his staff next week to advocate for removing the income and asset limits on Medicaid buy-in programs for working disabled adults across the country. In case you don't know, Massachusetts is the only state that has no income or asset limits on their Medicaid buy-in program, so people with disabilities can go to work and not risk losing Medicaid, which pays for PCA care and wheelchairs and other durable medical equipment. So that's part of our work on national advocacy, and we're really excited about it. And we can go to the next slide. And these are just general updates. I probably mentioned them before. You know, the curb ramp settlement was finalized by the courts, so that's in place. Outdoor dining is ending soon. It already ended in the North End, and we're working on a permanent program for next year, which will include accessibility, standard accessibility that we always require in these conditions. The bike outreach plan we've pushed off till next year, and the ride is reverting back to their old scheduling platform following multiple challenges with the new one. And I believe Jerry was going to talk about the T, so I'm going to leave some time for him to do that. Lastly, the Community Access Monitor training with MOD is confirmed for Thursday, November 18th, and Tuesday, November 30th. I know some of you signed up, and for those who didn't, we hope you can make it. So I'm going to end there and leave some time for the board to discuss any issues they'd like to put on the table.
Commissioner, I just had a clarifying question regarding, I thought last month that the board approved 2 letters for Councilor Asabi George, and at that time, Councilor Wu, to thank them for filling out the survey questions that the board and BCIL put together. I didn't think that was a letter welcoming her, Councilor Wu, to the congratulating her and welcoming her to the mayoralship. Correct me if I'm wrong. I thought those 2 letters were approved, and I thought they were going to go out between last month's meeting and this one.
They went out.
Yeah, those went out, but I believe we also sent a draft based on the welcome letter to Mayor Janey that you sent. I think it was Paul who suggested, or maybe, I'm not sure who suggested it, but that we get ahead of it so that when the next mayor was elected, it wouldn't take like 6 months to get a congratulations and welcome letter out. So we just basically sent out the draft of the Mayor Janey letter. If we didn't send that out, I apologize, and we can do that. But
no problem. I appreciate you getting ahead of it. I wouldn't want it to take 6 months. 6 months either. The sooner we can approve that letter and get it out, the better.
We'll circulate that on Friday.
No problem. Thank you for that clarification, Commissioner.
I'll throw it back to Olivia.
Hi, Wes is here. I have a question.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Wes.
Just to add to Jerry's comment related to Mayor-elect Wu. I do have to admit that my wife and I actually met her at a local Halloween event, and that was really nice. I would really like to invite Mayor-elect Wu to one of the meetings here So perhaps we can send that letter and then also encourage her to be able to join us for a meeting that's occurring next year. That's my only addition to that letter, would be to add a sentence inviting her to join our advisory group.
In the draft, and then we can also, I think the priorities that you had identified are in there. We may want to revise them as well. So I will put that sentence in, and I will recirculate the draft so people can weigh in on it. But that is a great idea. Thanks, Wes.
Olivia, this is Carl.
Yeah.
Do we want to vote on that now, or do you want to do that on the new business?
Let's do that now.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we send an welcome and invitation letter all in one to Mayor Wu.
Okay, do we have a second?
Jerry seconds.
Okay, do we have discussion?
We have music.
Which is always good, but.
Okay, do we have a vote?
Yeah. Let's vote.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hey.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the motion passes.
Great, and I don't want to hold it up at all, but if you could still circulate the draft, Commissioner, that would be great.
Yep, I will. I'll also send out my board report, which contains the report that Kim gave on the public health order for Mass and Cass.
Excellent. Let's move on to the architectural access report.
Great. Can you guys hear me?
Put a little closer.
Yes.
Hi, everyone. My name is Patricia Mendez, and I have a quick architectural access update. Just to let you know that we are going to be part of the subcommittee for promulgating an update to the Architectural Access Board Regulations 521 CMR. We're going to start meeting monthly, and the first meeting is in November. Second, as Commissioner said, we're going to conduct a CAM training, and I will send you a quick email to ask you for your addresses. So please respond that to me when you get it. Last two quick things. There is construction in the plaza, as you know, and we have now a temporary ramp in front of the main entrance of City Hall on the Cambridge side to the third floor lobby. It's a full-size amp ramp, so that is available now during construction for a few months. And that's it for my quick architectural access update.
Oh, Patricia, this is Carl.
Hi, Carl.
You said CAM training. For those who are on the call that may not know or who are watching, can you just say what that is?
Community
Access
Community
monitor.
Community access monitor.
And what does that training entail?
It has ADA information and all American with Disabilities Act information, and also some Architectural Access Board regulations and how to participate and be engaged in advocacy for your community.
Great, thank you. I've actually participated in the training a few times, and it is well worth doing for those who haven't done it.
Thank you, Carl. Yeah, this is going to be my first time. I'm super excited.
All right. Let's move on to announcements.
Carl, I have an announcement, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
This is totally self-serving, so let me say that up front. So I have been working on this project for about 4 or 5 months, many of you know, I'm a huge fan of audio description for the blind and visually impaired, where they describe key visual elements of costume, scenery, that sort of thing. It can be done for movie, television, film, theater, museum, it can be done in a number of aspects. But I have been working on an award gala, an audio description award gala, which will be broadcast live on Peacock, also streamed over the internet at adawardgala.org. That is adawardgala.org. And we're going to have award recipients from some of the major streaming services. We'll have an interview with Barry Cronin, who invented audio description for broadcast television. We're even going to have a Hall of Fame quarterback who I just can't remember his name right now. He used to play for the St. Louis Rams. He had the blind and visually impaired kid, and he'll be making announcements. We have some famous actors and actresses. So again, and that's on November 18th at 7:30 p.m. November 18th at 7:30 p.m. And for more information, go to adawardgala.org.
Okay, and any other announcements?
Yes, Olivia, this is Jerry. As the commissioner said, and and Elizabeth Dienklauer, who wasn't able to attend tonight's meeting, asked me to give just an update on the ride, basically piggybacking on what the commissioner mentioned last month about changing, they're reverting back to their old software system about booking rides and so forth. That was implemented on November 1st. From what we gather from the folks that are on our tag, have been meeting regularly with the ride since the implementation. From what we gather, they have started to see some improvements in terms of on-time performance and service, but folks are still having tons of problems with the ride. So for the public, we're going to have a public-wide meeting. Our tag is sponsoring a public-wide, open to the public meeting with the assistant general manager for the T that oversees the ride, Jeff Gonaville, and the ride staff. It's going to be on November 16th, Tuesday, from 3 to 4:30 via Zoom. I would encourage anyone who's had problems with the ride over the last year, 2 years, whatever, to attend that meeting, to open it up to your networks, and let them know, and this is our opportunity to let the ride really know, put a face to all these problems, and to hold their feet to the fire, and for us to maybe get some answers as to what they're going to do, to improve service and to regain our trust, so that we can, we can rely on the ride again. It's not, none of this is going to be a quick fix, but again, it's our opportunity to really put faces to names of problems and to let them know that when there's a mistrip, it affects a person, we're not just a package, we're not just a number, but it's an actual person, and hold their feet to the fire. Like I said, I put that, I've given the commissioner and Andrea the information about the Zoom. They're going to distribute that to all of the board members, so please, again, attend if you can, 3 to 4:30 next Tuesday, and invite your friends, colleagues, and folks in your networks.
All right, thank you, Jerry.
You're welcome.
Let me just double check this. Okay, let's move on to old business.
This is Wes. I'm sorry, I have something.
Oh, go ahead, Wes.
I wanted to make a comment about the RIDE program related to what Jerry just said. I wanted to follow up with some recent information that I got today. I believe that the Department of Justice is going to be suing Uber for providing or causing increased charges for people with disabilities. And so I think it'll be really interesting to see what happens with this case going on in the next several weeks. Thank you.
Definitely. Let's move on to old business. We don't have any. We've kind of cleared through it. New business. Is there any new business? Okay, hearing none. It's time for public input. Members of the public, you can feel free to unmute yourself and give us your feedback.
Okay, this is Concetta, and I am happy to be here. I'm happy I remembered this meeting, and I want to say that I totally agree with something someone said earlier. I think it was Laurie, about having a dedicated number to call for opioid-related, whether it's overdoses or any other kind of opioid-related emergency. So as soon as this number rings and the person who is answering knows that this is supposed to be opioid-related, so, you know, it will eliminate the need for thinking, is it a fire, did somebody fall, or the medical emergency. It would just be dedicated to opioids or other similar types of drug-related emergencies. In terms of the ride, I don't use it myself because I now have one of those passes, a disability pass, but I believe I read somewhere in one of the newspapers, I believe, that the ride, somebody's proposing that the ride should be disentangled from the MBT and that the state should take over the ride as a services program. So that might be something that people could follow up to see whether they can remove the ride from the MBTA and have it as a state services program. Just throwing that out there, something I read. Okay, I'm finished. Thank you for having me.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? All right.
Will I get to make my motion?
I think it's that time of the evening.
I would be disappointed if anybody else made this one. I make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, second?
I second. Jerry?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Have a good night, everyone.
Anyone opposed? All abstentions? It's time to go.
Yes, thanks, everybody. Thanks for a great meeting.
Happy
Keep
Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Yeah, happy holiday, and look for your emails in regards to the ride meeting.
And we will see you on December 8th at 5:30.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.